everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology with Kepler College teachers. Today we are delighted to introduce Cameron Allen. Cameron is an astrologer, he is a herbalist and health consultant, and also a rising star in the astrological community. So thank you so much, Cameron, for joining us today, and how are you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing really well, just getting my day blossoming and, woke up this morning, did my morning practices, which is like, well, actually, now that I think about it, it's like this whole Ayurvedic thing that I've been practicing, and then I go into my yoga practice, and so I feel good.
Wonderful. Fantastic. So the first question we've got for you today is that on February 12th, you'll be teaching a webinar, which is Holistic Embodied Astrology. So for our viewers out there, how would you describe the webinar, and how would you define Holistic Embodied Astrology?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that. So one thing I can say, I'll define holistic from two different perspectives. The first perspective is just like how I internally orient towards it. And so over the years, as everyone, I feel like, who's like a seeker or somebody who's like deepening in their understanding of anything, the definition of what's holistic is always something that's like expanding, right? It's like, because what was holistic last year, and then I started learning about like self salts more deeply, and so that became part of the whole. And so just like holistic to me is just being in a place where I'm considering as many things as possible in trying to understand their interconnected nature, and allowing myself to deepen in what I understand, and also know that I still don't have the whole, right? And allow myself to expand in that. And so like for me, my orientation towards what's holistic is that ever expanding whole and how the interconnected parts relate together.
Wonderful. So in a sense that the whole is more important than the sum of its parts, and everything has to be viewed in a collective sense.
Exactly, yeah. And even sometimes, I like to even go further than that, because I forget, one of my teachers, he always talks about we need a context for the content, right? And so some of the times the sum of the parts is more important than the whole, because if we worry about the whole, then we miss the details of the sum that we're trying to get to. And then, so it's just like always, I feel like always when I'm thinking about holistic, even holistic thinking, right? I'm considering so many different things that I'm like having to not consider things at times,
right?
In order to still be holistic, even though that's, I just like to get all the way in there with that, and helping people with that type of orientation towards things, especially astrology. It is something that actually is taking us to the next word, which is embodied, which like it actually allows us to be here right now and just like pay attention to what we need to pay attention to, and not get lost in the world of thought, or, because even sometimes when it comes to holistic, we're like, it's like galactic and for small, and, it's like, I know, it's like, that's true. But like, if we're thinking about this galactic stuff, which we are with astrology very often, right? It could take us and volatilize us into the celestial spheres where we have no feet on the terrestrial ground.
Absolutely. And I think there's a great quote on your website, and I think, was it from one of your teachers, walking the spiritual path, but with practical feet. Is that correct? That sounds a great piece of advice.
Always used to say that. And I would never let go of that statement, because it's just so, it's so correct, and it feels so true, especially where we're at in this space and time where we see things from the east and west coming together, and we see like the sciences from the heavens and the earth coming together. And it's like always just being mindful of like having the two together always before we separate them apart, and only separating them apart to bring them back together, which allows the things to be holistic.
I love that description. That's wonderful. And you'll also, coming up through Kepler, you'll be teaching a series of workshops. Is that correct? Through the year, or?
Yeah, and so the Holistic Embodied Astrology webinars is just like an introduction or an invitation into a perspective or a lens. And then I'm going to invite everyone to go through the year with me with this lens. And we're going to go through each zodiac sign during each season, and we'll learn about not just the zodiac sign, but the season that it is in. And that's just from like where I'm at in the United States, from that seasonal perspective. But I also have been developing things with some people that I've spoken with in other hemispheres, it's so that I can like blend those in as well and offer insights for people who aren't here as well. Yeah, so we'll talk about the herbs that go with that, not only that season, but that zodiac sign. We'll talk about the organ system specific to that zodiac sign. We'll talk about the area of the body. And the biggest thing that I'm really excited about is that I'm going to be giving at least 2 different practices for each zodiac sign, and giving people like a lot of time, like 2 weeks of time at minimum, to actually work with that and see how it allows that energy to like really move in your body, and how you can get a deeper understanding and not have to like, what was Aries again? You know, it's like, no, like I did that one breathing exercise for 2 weeks in that class with Cameron, and I know exactly what that is. I know exactly what that feels like, you know. And there'll be other invitations that'll be kind of like fun, that I'll have people like document, like, what is it like to like put your finger in like and have a pinch of cayenne versus like a bunch of cayenne on some food, right? Like, it's like to know the energy of Aries, to know how Aries represents the sinus cavity, and like to like have cayenne like that, it's a whole different experience, right? It's a whole different experience. So just taking people through that and like really grounding people into their body. And, you know, not to say that there won't be space for like techniques or to get to like things that people perceive as advanced or complex.
Right.
But to really understand that no matter what happens, we have to understand simplicity, because if we don't have simplicity, then things that are complex seem complicated, but they're really not. Right?
Absolutely. And that's going to be part of the course as well, because I don't believe there's any prerequisite. I mean, this is really for all levels of astrological, you know, students or education. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And from the lens and perspective that I'm coming from, it definitely will be, you know, I'm really hopeful that a lot of people who consider themselves to be intermediate and or advanced come as well, because, you know, it could really drop them back into a more comfortable space instead of, you know, this technique about what's going to happen in 30 years. It's like, well, like, are you breathing properly as a Gemini? You know, it's just, I can tell you if like something's going to potentially happen to your lungs in 15 years, you know, and like that's a thing potentially, but are you breathing right now? And do you have resources to allow yourself to expand your capacity to breathe?
I like that. It also sounds like bringing it back to the basics and the fundamentals, and understanding where you are at this present moment in time, whether that's the breathing, or you were talking about just before geographically, you know, you could be in different cultures. One video I saw you talking about, you know, third house, the local plants in your environment, and just exploring your local area and the different things and through that. So do you have any examples you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, actually I can pull let's see. Just looking at, you know, the human anatomy and seeing here Aries at the head, and then just like finding an understanding of why Aries rules the head, and even just thinking about the brain stem, right? The brain stem being like one of the most like primal things happening within like the person, you know. It's like it really taps into the perspective that Aries, sometimes I feel like it gets infantilized, as in like they're the babies of the zodiac, or they're impulsive, and that is true in a lot of ways. And also it's like, well, why is that the case? And one thing that is the reason why, from my perspective, is because it rules the brainstem, and it's like the head. It's like the first thing that we're leading with. And so we can take that perspective from like it just being impulsive to be the thing that we're leading with, and not infantilizing it, and then instead of infantilizing it, saying it is like the process that a baby might have, which has to do with a trial and error process, which has to do with pure presence, and one that has maybe less forethought than people who perceive themselves to be more developed think is necessary, which in truth isn't always necessary, because sometimes we actually override our instincts and impulses with the cortex, you know, the frontal cortex. It like actually stops us from being able to trust our instincts, and we like think so much that it just like can slow things down. And And when that happens, there's many other things that come with that. And so that's just one perspective that I would give to start with. And then as you see here, through the zodiac, each sign rules a different part of the body, and it also rules a different organ system. That's just a perspective. And then also you see this person over here, and how this is a more dynamic photo instead of it having wrapped around in the houses. And when we go over each zodiac sign, we'll talk about specific like massage techniques or practices to help move and create spaciousness and release that area of the body so that we can find more embodiment, really. And at the end of the day, it's just like, so that we can have space for more information, and we have more space for information, and we feel more regulated, calm, and safe. And then also that allows us to go from just being in the linear, logical brain to allowing us to expand to more intuitive capacities that we truly all have. And not to say that we want to leave one and go to the other, but we want to have the potential capacity to merge the two together in any present moment in time. So
fantastic. And I've seen you talk about other things, like body type and sorry, there's a delay on my thing here. Body types and just different ways that. So when you're working with clients, do you essentially personalize your advice to them based on their natal chart, correct? Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then also, because, I've seen through my years in practicing, especially since I've gotten more out into the astrological community, people having like hesitations as well around like medical astrology. And so also just taking it from the perspective of what elements are in the chart, and like helping people understand what elements go with potential tissue states in the body, those potential tissue states in the body, and how we can have different tastes or flavors of food, right? And so when we take it that far, it's just like, we actually sometimes put the astrology chart down, but because we're using it as a reference point. And then we go to like nature, and we go into things in the world and our daily habits and routines, and just really helping people first understand that, so that after 3 to 5 sessions, they should be able to, at least in their body, say, okay, I can feel this. I can notice the difference. And now I know where my baseline is, and I understand more of my chart. So now I know how to move into this future where I see these things going to potentially happen, and how to be in relationship with that future rather than just projecting out towards it, So yeah, the constitution and body type is so important, because also there's certain predispositions that come with it, like somebody like myself, if I would have known when I was younger that it might take me longer to learn things, but when I learn them, they're really here and locked in. I could have saved so much judgment of myself when I was younger. Somebody who maybe has a more air element, or even more like slender disposition to them, maybe they're supposed to be tapped into their intuition more than people who are like, even that sometimes people have teachers and they're like, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. People who are more intuitive, they might not need to do it that way. And also sometimes they do need to do it that way because they do get too far out into that space. Right. But it's really about having that understanding. And what I always say is like, because understanding breeds peace. And when we have that peace, then we can have a more wide view and understanding of what's going on. And so that's the first thing I really feel like I've done in my practice, especially because my practice was started in the back of a herb shop in Memphis, Tennessee, with people who oftentimes had like no resources.
Right.
So education always had to be the first thing. And the more education, the more empowerment. The more you can know what to seek out that'll help you to further yourself and what you're doing in your life and in your practice of astrology, if you're a practicing astrologer already as well.
That's a wonderful description. And it kind of ties in with when you're talking about education. So me personally, coming from a very stiff and stuffy British education system, as I have grown older, realizing how much more out there is in the world, but you're also talking about resources. So geographically, economically, where people might be. So whether they're in the middle of the city, in the, we call it like council estates, like impoverished maybe areas, and, tailoring it into people in their reality of their resources, where they can go, whether they can get out in nature, whether they can get hold of certain herbs or something you're talking about. But it seems like you're seeing this from a very wide perspective, and bringing in every part of someone's life, and how they can, what I'm getting from it is tapping into their vital sources, their vital energies, and like you said, bringing it back, like simplicity, bringing it back to your core, and learning those techniques. But I think what you're doing is absolutely wonderful and fantastic, and you describe it in such an eloquently beautiful way as well, which is fantastic. And I did forget to mention, sorry, that the webinar on February 12th is a diversity fundraising webinar, and I will leave the description and the link in the video below. So for anyone who wishes to register, please consider donating as you go and register for Cameron's fantastic webinar in February. And again, we'll have more information for the workshops he'll be doing. And I'd throw that in there because I forgot to say that. So talking about yourself and your beginnings, like I believe you have a background in sports science, but how did you begin your astrological journey and your health and wellness? And what point did you get to when you started to infuse astrology and health and wellness and well-being and that journey?
Yeah, so really it all started in college, even though, and it's funny because when people first asked me that question, I had like a very specific answer, because I forgot so much that happened in college, because I was so just like following the present moment and not thinking about like going down this path or doing this or doing that. So in college, I tore my ACL one year playing football, because I played football in college. And so that had me like really still for a whole year. And in that year, or maybe it was like a year before, and I got deeper into it that year, but either way it goes, I started reading into like alchemy, and like what was alchemy. And so that was really my first introduction to the planets. So even though I wasn't like looking at astrology, I still was like getting into astrology through the lens of alchemy, and like learning like the days of the week and just like some simple attributes. And I was really connecting it to like papers that I was writing, because I have a degree in psychology as well as the degree in health and sports science. So I would do papers on Carl Jung. Actually, I would do papers on Carl Jung so much that my teachers made me like stop, and I had like, but like, so I was doing papers on Carl Jung, and that's what like had me like getting into alchemy and learning the planets then. So that's what like actually first started me with astrology, even though I didn't know it. But then later on, I started working at a spiritual supply store. This was like 7 years ago at this point, yeah. And I was the herbalist, and so I just practiced herbalism, and so since it also was a spiritual supply store, looking in books, it's just like I would look at herbs and it would be like, this herb goes with this planet, this herb goes with this planet. And like after you look at like 25 books and like 15 of them are saying different things, I'm just like, well, what's up with these planets and these plants, and like why is everybody saying different things? So I started asking people around, because that's how I always started learning working at that shop. I would just say like, hey, what do you know about this? Hey, what do you know about this? Because I had access to so many people and their wisdom. And so I just started asking a bunch of people questions, and nobody really knew anything about astrology here. And so I just started picking up books and just like looking through them and looking at them. And to be quite honest, when I first was looking at books, I would just be like, this isn't it. And I would pick up another book and I'm like, this isn't it. And my friend was like, Cameron, like, you're not an astrologer. What do you mean this isn't it? How do you know? And I'm just like, I don't know. I just know.
Yeah.
And so I kept doing that until I came across evolutionary astrology, which was where I first started like rooting down into like a tradition that had to do with more like psychological like perspectives and reflections on it. And before then, I took a course with Sage Apopum over at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and that's called Botanical Constellations. And it's just about like the relationship between the plants and the planets and the seasons and stuff like that. And that really, really, really helped me out a lot. in being able to not only understand how some people made their correspondences, but also go out in nature and reflect myself. You know, that's one big thing my teacher always would say. He would just say, go out in nature and let her teach you.
Wonderful.
Right. And so a lot of things just started becoming self-evident, you know, and they didn't need, I didn't need a research paper to write about it. It was just like, it was literally the first 3 years that I followed this patterning of the seasons. Is every single year when the sun moved into a mutable sign, the next season would show itself for 2 days, and then it would go back to like the season that was there before. You know, it was just like very observable things that it's like, wow, like I don't even have to believe this. This is what's happening.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I love from your beginnings there, it's that natural curiosity that you have, that you weren't satisfied with the books you were reading. It was like, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to go out myself and I'm going to test these theories and do this here. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. And maybe it gets to a wider point of, you know, particularly Western societies and our disconnect with nature and things around us. We're so inundated with, you know, like now technology, computers and stuff. And as you were saying before, being in our minds and everything like that. But even just getting out into, like you said, the local area and just plants, herbs, things that when people are driving around, that they might not even get into their consciousness, because we are, I feel we do have that disconnect from that element and the source and the vitality. And but I just love how you went out and went, hold on a minute, I'm actually going to practically, like you said before, practically go out myself and test and physically put your hands on these herbs and taste and smell and develop your own system, so to speak. And I think that's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was really, really important. And it was, you know, at first it was a trial and error process, you know, even though I was learning from people, that's not really how I like actually digest information the best. So I always have to like actually like act it out or try it out, or, you know, mad scientist experiment with it. And so through the years, that's actually like how everything like got built up. And it was amazing for me, because if I would have been like within like any tradition or like a group of people who were astrologers or a group of people who were herbalists already, then I might have like shunned or like quieted my own like understanding of things, and because I wouldn't have experienced, and I would have just been like listening to people. But instead I got to stand in the back of a herb room and ask people questions. And then once I started picking up on patterns, I was able to just like, things would just click in. And then within 2 years, truthfully, I had enough things around me that by word of mouth, I had like lines of people coming into the store. And so that was just like a beautiful foundation that, I'm thankful for, and has taken me where I am today. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's such a fascinating story. And I'll be so excited to watch your webinar on February 12th. Like I say, I'm going to put the description below this video and people can register and sign up. And then we're going to put more information on the workshops that you'll be giving. But thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And I can't wait to watch your presentation in the next couple of weeks.
Same. Yeah, it was nice meeting you, and I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate everyone who's watching, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you. So if everyone out there, again, if you like the video, please like and subscribe. And as we'll be producing more content, and again, I'll repeat, I'll put the links in the descriptions below. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.